Hey guys, welcome back to OldWayz number 78.
7-8.
Yeah, we had some technical difficulty with the last one.
We never say we're going to publish these in order.
Yeah, but we do welcome you back. In the decided minority when I say that.
Oh yeah.
I know I am. And I'm not against progress. But if you look at the guys who flew them, you have guys like Greg Boynton and Richard Bond.
Yeah.
And, will there ever be an opportunity to break Bond's record? Probably not.
History, we still know the names of Achilles,
Yeah.
of Hector,
Paris.
all these great warriors of the past, the stories they told of them. They were the killing machines of their day. We remember Patton, we remember Rommel, we remember Montgomery,
Yeah.
we remember Lee and Grant, Stewart.
Did you see where they put Lee's portrait back in at West Point?
Yeah.
They had taken it out, but they put him back up.
Well, Lee Barracks is one of the BMI, So, yeah. It's one of those things where we remember these people and these names.
Right.
Are we going to talk about the guy that racked up the most kills sitting in a video game that was actually controlling a weapon that was taking out bad guys on the other side?
Probably not.
Probably not. There were many who felt that when we dropped the bomb in World War II, that it was sort of unfair, and I can see that. It probably, in truth, saved more lives because the Japanese were willing to fight to the death.
Ian McCullum on Forgotten Weapons did an episode yesterday, or it might have been the day before, on bayonets for poles.
Yeah.
The Japanese pole bayonet.
Yeah, just turned into a spear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's that kind of, we'll look back at history. We get to live the times, but we don't get to write the times.
No.
History, Napoleon said it best, history is a lie that we agree upon.
Yeah.
Because when you dig deep enough, there is no pure shining armor on any side at any time. It is combat, it is down, it is dirty, it is brutal. We did things that would not be something you want to talk about in church. They did things, that's just human nature. Man can be very, very cruel.
Oh, yeah.
And the more desperate he gets, the crueler he gets.
Very true.
I had a preacher when I was early in the training said to me one time, he said that civilization is a shroud hung upon an ape. That when we are pushed, you see the animal in us. Of course, he had survived Korea. And he said, I marched all the way to the top of Korea and back to the bottom of Korea and back to the top of Korea. So he had seen some stuff. And he said the cruelty that humans can inflict upon each other is just without end.
I heard somebody say just the other day that he said, and I quote, I'm not a violent man, but I can be a man of violence.
Yeah. But the things are changing now to where in the past there was a buildup. Look at World War II. World War II hit and we were not prepared for war. We knew it was coming, but we weren't really prepared. And it took us 6 months to a year to truly change over to that kind of production. Once we did, nobody in the world comes close. We could outperform all of them in sheer industrial. They talked about they only had a total of less than 2,500 Tiger tanks in the entire German army in the entire war. We had 50,000 Shermans. You know, yes, one of their Tigers could take out 20 of ours, but we've got 50,000.
Yeah.
You know.
I fear we have awoken a giant and filled him with a terrible resolve.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the bottom line.
Isakuro Yamamoto, December the 8th, 1941.
Today, it's not. We can mobilize instantly. And so there's no time to reflect, no time to cool off. That was a big fear we had during the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Cold War and everything else, that things would escalate too quickly, and once the missiles started flying, there was no stopping it.
Yeah, I don't think that we have the industrial capacity right now to take on a situation like World War II.
No, I don't think we do.
I think we've shipped too many things offshore, and now they're coming back.
They're coming back in droves.
But
we're seeing a lot of stuff here in Alabama pop back up.
Yeah, right now, I think we would be at a disadvantage at least for 6 to 8 months, 9 months.
Most conflicts are over in 100 days now.
That's true.
I mean, when the Desert One took off, boom, 12 days Israel took out Iran. 12 days.
12 days.
You know, and to realize just what a Goliath that is, Iran had a 1 million-man army. Israel doesn't have that many combined everything. And yet they were able to hit and strategically shut them down in that amount of time.
Which kind of goes back to my thoughts about technology. I mean, technology has its advantages.
It gives a great deal.
I agree with that. I agree to that.
But we're fielding lasers now.
Yeah.
We have several warships that now have an onboard laser that can lock on and take out missiles, ships, whatever. And, you know, the Buck Rogers era is beginning. Like I said, you can't get any faster. In F4, we figured out you can go faster, but it doesn't give you any advantage, and it sucks fuel.
That submarine that we couldn't think of the name, USS Barb.
Barb, that's it, USS Barb. It went and blew up a Japanese train.
It sank a train.
Yeah, they saw trains coming by, and so they pulled into a harbor, and he put off a group, and they took a scuttling charge and went up and rigged a trestle to blow up, and blew up a train.
Yeah. And plugging another channel, Fat Electrician has got a really good video.
Oh, Fat Electrician's a great channel. You guys need to check him out. If
you haven't, check him out. But he has a really, really good video about the Barb and its adventures under Commander Fluckey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they awarded him the Medal of Honor for that. I don't know if it was for that specific mission or not, but for his war patrols, he was awarded the Medal of Honor.
Well, things that, like I said, about when we went to cartridge firearms, the world rearmed. The war in Ukraine has showed us how drones are the wave of the future. You put out soldiers, and they can be swarmed by these little bitty things that, you know, put in the palm of your hand and taken out, and they're body heat. You know, you can do all the camouflage you want, it picks up body heat, it'll pick up movement. And they don't dump one, they dump 30,000. As an aircraft goes over them, they just drop and start buzzing you like hornets. And you've just about made infantry obsolete by doing that. And then, well, we got to have a jammer. Now you got to have electronic jammers to stop that. And we're going to see what is the fabric of war change, just like the British kept trying so desperately to figure a way to make cavalry work in World War I. They just
Hiram Maxim took care of that.
Yeah, but they just kept trying because it had been such an integral part of British war for hundreds and hundreds of years. You know, until Scotland broke a heavy cavalry charge. And one of theirs, William Wallace did.
Yeah.
Nobody in 300 years had stood up to a heavy cavalry charge. They just run over you. And he's one that got long spears and just snatched at spears. He had rediscovered what the Romans had done. Because that's exactly the way the Romans would defend against cavalry 1,000 years before. We forgot how to do it.
Yeah.
The next war may be all digital. Would it be a bad thing to have a war where nobody participated, but you had remote control planes, remote control ships, remote control tanks, and they went and blew each other up and nobody got hurt? Would that be such a bad thing? You know, could you accept victory or defeat when it was some mechanical thing that got blew up, or do you have to get bloody and die? Because we've always had to get bloody and die. But could you just say, dang it, we lost? You know, it becomes like a global video game if you scale it up big enough.
Do you remember that episode of Star Trek where two rival planets were fighting, and one planet would shine a light onto the other, and the people inside that circle of light would voluntarily report to a disruptor and be
killed?
And they would fire their beam of light back. It's like aiming a flashlight at each other.
They've been at war for hundreds of years.
Yes.
And stopped using weapons, and they just estimated and approximated the casualties to keep from actually destroying each other.
Yeah.
You know, and Kirk took that away and said, I've given you back war, bloody in all its glory. Now you get to play war. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is a possibility. You know? Heck, we can't even trust what we see on TV or anything else with AI and everything else. Would you trust somebody saying, oh, we got conquered by Lithuania? Really? How'd that happen? I don't know. It's just going to be a different time.
Yes, it is. So don't give up on your old ways.
No. We'll look at the average person prior to 1860 was born and lived their entire life in about a 20-mile circle. That was it. Unless you had to go off to war or you went off to become a preacher or something.
Yeah.
20-mile circle. The average person lived their entire life in a 20-mile circle. And after the Civil War, we got trains.
Yeah.
Now you could travel a lot further, get out a lot better.
Y'all know, I've been reading Horace Kephart, and in his book, Our American Highlanders, I believe that's the title of it.
Mm-hmm. Our Southern Highlanders.
Our Southern Highlanders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He talks about even into the early teens, 20s, and 30s, the 19 teens, 20s, and 30s, there were still people who lived like that back in the mountains of North Carolina and North Georgia and Virginia, who had never been more than 10 miles from the house.
Mm-hmm.
And they had never seen a train. They had never seen an automobile. They had never, it was very, very clannish,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I'm sure, where he got the phrase the Highlanders.
When he's referring to clannish, he doesn't mean like Ku Klux.
No, he means
like Scottish clan.
Yeah, Scottish clans.
Family.
Celtic clans.
Celtic clans, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know if I've told y'all about this one, but I picked this one up. Sorry guys, the weather's got me kind of crackly. By this book, Woodscraft and Camping by Ness Monk. His real name was George Washington Sears. And he lived in the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century. Well, I take that back. He was born in 1820. So he lived through the greater part of the 19th century. Let me give you the ISB. Let's see, there we go. I hope you can see that, in case you want to order it. But I have had so much fun reading through this book. And I'm going to have a review for it later on. But I do highly recommend it. It's a great reference book. And the books that I've got by Kephart, I highly recommend them too. They're very good information from guys who did it for real. You know, for most of us today, it's a hobby. Mm-hmm. But these guys lived it. They did it for real. Mm-hmm. I think that I'm going to start to sort of copy what they did. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got a fair amount of knowledge when it comes to woodscraft and woods lore. But like I said, these guys did it for real, and they're the best go-to if you're looking for a source of information.
I have collected quite a few books over the years, and I forget the officer's name, but I've got it. And he was commissioned by the government. He was actually a cavalry officer through the Civil War, and then immediately after the Civil War, he was still a cavalry officer. And for people heading west.
William Marcy.
And they were talking about how to pack a wagon, yep, how to set up for a 6-month journey, yep, and stuff like that. Now, that's outdated. Yeah, but, you know.
If you just happen to be going west in a Conestoga, or in a prairie schooner wagon.
Yeah, something's being pulled at a walking pace where it's not a 60-mile-an-hour vehicle, you know. And as my mentor Grouch pointed out, he gave me a book that was canoe camping, mm-hmm, and it had been written in about 1909. Mm-hmm. And a canoe is a canoe. Materials have changed, but the idea of how to do it and etc. This gentleman was passing on his decades worth of experience of being a surveyor, and he was to survey rivers and stuff like that. And so it was how to read water, how to note flood areas, how to etc. How to pack for a 30-day mission in a canoe, how to carry stuff. And times change, but the water's the same. A canoe is a canoe, maybe bigger, maybe different material, but it's still a canoe.
Well, building off of that, you know, they call Alabama the Amazon of North America.
Yeah.
Well, we have thousands of miles of navigable waterway. Case in point, look over our shoulder.
P River.
Okay. It's not a very long river, but you can paddle from one end of it to the other. And, you know, you can't do it overnight. I think there's, about 300-400 miles of river, the way that it circles back and forth.
Oh, well now, in total.
I know it drains about 900 square miles.
Oh, hell yeah, it's huge. But the river itself, the P River, I think, is like 100 and...
I can't remember.
I want to say it's like 108 miles long, but it dead ends at Geneva into the Choctawhatchee River.
Right. And
the Choctawhatchee River is 187 miles long, and that's where it dumps into the Gulf.
Yeah. Well, now, P River is about twice as long as the Choctawhatchee.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Choctawhatchee is the bigger of the two.
Yeah, because from the headwaters over here at Dothan or up at Ozark, because it's East and West Choctawhatchee come together.
Yeah.
there at Geneva is only like 50-something miles.
Yeah.
And so this flows down and joins to it. But what it is this is the Choctahatchee River and this is the Pea River. If it was this way, this river would go all the way to the Gulf, but it's actually, they go together at that point, you know. But whoever's naming it gets to pick which is which. So.
Yeah. But yeah, his canoeing, it's the same thing. You know, that information in that book that Grouch gave him is just as viable today as it was the day that it was written.
Yeah.
This information by Nesmunk, I mean, Nesmunk died in like 1884, but the information in here is just as valid as it was in 1884. Okay? Same thing with Kephart. Kephart died in an automobile accident, I think, in 1934. But his information is still valid. Who was the guy that wrote the book, the encyclopedia that is written about 1604?
Oh.
What was that guy's name? I can't think of it. But his information in that book, written, you know, more than 400 years ago, is still valid. A brick has not changed. He teaches you how to lay brick. He teaches you how to do joinery. He teaches you how to do Diderot's encyclopedia. We both have got copies of that on the shelf for a reason. Okay?
Well, when we were in school, and a big thing you had to learn about was the Renaissance. And they talk about Michelangelo, and they talk about Leonardo da Vinci, and they talk about all this. That little subtext they don't really emphasize so much is this was the stuff that the Roman Empire had known 1,000 years before. And when the empire, quote, quote, collapsed, this stuff went into the monasteries and they hand recopied it to make sure the books didn't deteriorate. And all the Renaissance is when they brought that information back out into general use. You know, it was something that was known 1,000 years before, but between here and here we call it the Dark Ages.
Because we forgot.
Because we forgot. And so we forgot how to build an archway. We forgot how to build an aqueduct. We forgot how to build a working fountain. We forgot all this technology, and it was like we think of like a nuclear war. The world had broke up in that part of Europe and everything. It broke up into small little feudal kingdoms that spent more time trying to stay alive and kill each other than they worried about how to get water, you know, or how to process leather or whatever. And then all of this came out. And suddenly they were like, oh, well, that's how you do it. They were just reading the stuff that had been known 1,000 years before.
Interesting you should talk about water and leather in the same sentence. You know, up until just recently, and recently is a relative term. I'm not talking about the last 2 or 3 weeks. I'm talking about the last 20 or 30 years. A lot of the water piping in Boston was hollow logs with leather grommets where the hogs joined together.
Yeah.
In the really old sections of town, they still had wooden water logs.
They've been there for 300 years.
Yeah.
Still running.
Yeah. The technology, just because the technology is old doesn't mean it's not viable.
They had hot and cold running water on Caligula's barge.
Right.
They found a water spigot that looks just like one you buy at Lowe's today, except the little twisty piece on top looked different.
Yeah.
But as far as the mechanism, when they found it on the barge, they thought it was a modern inclusion. That a modern one had got down there until they found them mounted to the actual walls and proved that this thing had hot and cold running water. You know, there were cities that had sewage systems in it.
Yeah. Rome had its own. Athens had its own.
when they did the TV show Rome, the miniseries
Right.
Rome, they went to Rome and they went to a street in Rome that this house had been continuously occupied in some capacity since the Roman times. This street has been occupied. This house, it has somebody living in it. So they went on that street, and all they did was they pulled the modern lights off the wall, but it's the same walls, the same street that was there in actual Roman times. This doorway was the door. You know, this wooden door may be 600 years old, you know, because they had to replace it eventually. But it was the same stuff they were still using. So old technology is still technology, you know.
The fun thing about going to places like Rome or Florence or Athens is the cities are built on top of each other. And you can go down a street, and it's some also, there's some of that also in England, but you can go down into the basement and open up a door and keep going down and keep going down and keep going down about 4 levels. And I want to think there's a street in Edinburgh, Scotland that is about 4 layers deep. The original street level is like 40 feet underground. Mm-hmm. And you can go down there and you walk around and see the buildings. And
they didn't intend to bury it. What happened was, over time, the dirt built up around the outside. They went to building second stories. The second stories, they figured out, you know, if we just come up here and make it level, and they kept going, and that's where they did. It's like they just built in the ground. By going up, they added to. And you hear all the time the stories about how they, you know, somebody was digging in their basement and suddenly found an entire other house underneath them.
Yeah. You
know, the history is full of stuff like that here in the South. You know, all of this land has been occupied for hundreds of years. And so somewhere on your land is probably the foundation of somebody else's home, farm, business from hundreds of years ago.
There's a hill that we're looking out at right back up here. And up on top of that hill, there used to be this was the old Holloway plantation back in the very early days of Alabama. And when I was a kid, the old foundation of the house was up there on top of the hill. And there were 2 massive oak trees where, you know, we're talking 8 or 10 feet in diameter that were planted across the road from the house. Those trees have since died and fallen, but there was a well out there by the house. And I can remember when I was a kid, my granddaddy went out to the co-op. You could do that back then. And bought about 8 sticks of dynamite. And he got him about 3 minutes worth of fuse and went up there. He had been losing calves down that well. And he wound it up, Jim put the sticks together, and he put his fuse into the center stick, lit it, and dropped it down that well, and then ran. And you can still see to this day, there's a dip
caved in the well.
Where the well caved in, and we didn't lose any more cows down that well. I'm not really sure where that tangent was going,
but yeah, I mean, that it's just time and things change.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they kind of stay the same in a lot of ways. It's just, you know, water's water. People had to have water. Fuel. When our parents were kids, fuel was wood or coal. Now it's electricity. Or gas.
Or in the odd case back when they were kids, back odd case may be, back when our parents were kids, some houses had fuel oil furnaces. And I can remember going into my grandmother's house where my mom grew up and lighting a piece of paper, a wadded up piece of paper, and tossing it into the furnace, into the pool of fuel oil, and it going poof, and heating up the house in the wintertime.
We had natural gas heat, and then we had replaced one big fireplace up front, but it was a coal fireplace. It was shallow,
yeah,
because it was for a coal brazier in it. It wasn't for a lot of firewood. And then in the kitchen had been a wood stove.
Yeah.
And when my dad had got there, they had got rid of the wood stove in the 50s, a few years before I was born, and they had closed up the old chimney, blocked off the fireplace, and right in front of it put a space heater for a natural gas space heater. So that was how we heated the house.
Yeah, it's the same thing in my house. I know I've told y'all I live in the house that my grandfather built for my grandmother when they got married 100 years ago. And they boarded up all of the fireplaces and put gas heaters in front of them. And my daddy used to laugh and say the happiest day of his life is when he got to quit stoking the wood boxes. That was one of the happiest days of his life.
Yeah, because that was a job. Every afternoon you split kindling. You know, you kept your logs and something like that size so that they would dry evenly, and then you would split them to keep them fresh. You didn't split it ahead of time because it would cause problems. It wouldn't burn as well. And they'd get out there and they'd split what would be the 24 hours worth of kindling and restock all the boxes and etc. so you had plenty of firewood.
Yeah, well, that was Daddy's job. He didn't like that at all.
You know, I've heard my uncles and stuff talk about when they were boys, and it was, whose job was it? Was it a rotating job, or was it a permanently assigned job?
Yeah.
And Benny, who was the oldest, he talked about it had been his job to split wood. And so they had a saw and they had a hatchet. And Granddaddy would get the wood from somebody, and they'd be lengths about like that. He said length of a forearm. And
1 cubit.
1 cubit. Length of a forearm. And said he'd get out there and he would use a wedge. He'd hit it with the axe. He'd pull the axe out. He'd put the hard wedge in and pound it and split. Pound and split. He said you'd be out there, sun be gone down, be out there with a lantern, because it was going to be a cold night, and you had to have this much. There was a box they had sitting there. It had to be all the way even to the top.
Yeah.
And so you'd come in and Mama had burnt 3/4 of what you just brought in, stoking the fire up because her bones was cold. And you had to go back out to the thing and sit there and split more firewood.
Of course, back then they put wood up by the multiple cord.
Oh, you'd have 5, 6, 8 cords for a winter.
Even down here where it's relatively mild.
I burned 2 cords last winter. Because I only run my fireplace once a day, just to heat up the main part of the house. Around sundown, when Hope be coming home, I'd lay the fire, wouldn't light it, and I'd go pick her up from work, and I'd come back and fire up the fireplace, and she'd sit there and relax for the tootsies up to the fire, the toes up to the fire, and everything, and I'd finish supper, and we'd eat in front of the fire, and we'd sit there and talk, and I'd stoke the fire up for about an hour until the room was uncomfortably warm, and that would get that whole part of the house nice and warm. And it was insulated enough, and you'd get it up to about 65, maybe 70 in there, and that'd be on the only heat we'd put in there. and the next morning you'd get up and it'd be like 52 in there.
Which, when the outside temperature is 28, it's not necessarily a bad
I said,
thing.
when it was snowing,
Yeah.
that's what I was doing. And so the coldest it got in the living room was 51, and which wasn't a big thing. In the bedroom, we got separate heat in there. That way I'm only heating one room in the house. I'm using fireplace for the rest of it.
You know how hot a vehicle can get even in the wintertime.
Yes.
I have annoyed members of my family because I run the AC in my car year round.
Yeah.
Because when it's, if I've got my AC set on, say, 68, and it's 28 outside, that's still a 40-degree temperature difference.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you can change that. It's 40 degrees warmer inside that car than it is outside the window.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing better. My daddy taught me that about keeping the window cracked in the winter on the truck. He says you should be warm and comfortable, but not hot. That way when you got to open the door and get in and out, it's not such a big, huge shock to you.
Yes. And one of my banes of my existence in the summer, in real hot summertime or in the wintertime, is having these things fog up on you when you get out.
Yep.
Well,
anything else, brother?
I think we've checked all the boxes.
Okay.
Hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a ramble. We will be getting out. While I'm thinking about it, I'm going to finish up that tent pole little series that I started this week. So I should be getting that out this week. Gathering is the 15th through the 19th of October.
Correct. At Geneva State Forest Lake.
At Geneva State Forest Lake. Both of us will probably put up videos for it, the drive-in and stuff like that, so folks can come and join us. Seems to be people are real interested.
Yeah.
And coming and spending the week with you.
Yeah. Yeah, we have usually anywhere between 60 and 100 people show up.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less.
Mm-hmm.
But good people nonetheless.
Oh, yeah.
And with that, I think we're going to turn this one off and put it up on the shelf, call it finished. Guys, we hope you have a really good time, and like we always say, we'll see you down the road.